The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, a random series of technical difficulties and scheduling problems, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes recap SeanCon and the Spiel and Kennerspiel winners for this year. Then they'll be celebrating Feld-mas in July with a look at Forum Trajanum. And finally, they'll be looking back at their review of Lords of Hellas in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And also Alex.
And this is episode 205. I'll be Rome for Feld-mas, Alex. I'll be Rome for Feld-mas. That title courtesy the name father, Steve O'Rourke. And I got to tell you, Alex, we were saying before we started recording, I'm getting super annoyed how good he is at naming these episode titles.
You're starting to get. He's been my arch nemesis and rival for a lot longer. I mean, he's been super good at naming these things for a long time.
This is far too large of a talent for one person to have.
No one man should have all this power.
With great power comes great responsibility. But no, I think it's a perfect episode title. This is the long-awaited Feld-mas in July episode that I have been championing. I probably should just not say that word. That I have been pumping up, hyping. Been this hype person.
Hype.
And we're talking about Forum Trajanum, the Feld game that takes place in Rome. And then I know it ties in with the I'll Be Home for Christmas song. Who is that? Who sings that? Is that like Bing Crosby? I feel like that's
probably
Bing
a bunch
Crosby.
of people. It's probably one of those that's sung by like a lot of people.
Popularized by...
Bing Crosby is the first result that came up when I looked it up. So
yeah, all right, doing good.
There were also two films, a 2016 film and a 1998 film.
Perfect. That's great.
Yep.
So yeah, we name all of our episodes with the help of our amazing Board Game Geek Guild. We're guild number 2008. And then before every episode, we put up a Dukes on Deck so people can contribute their thoughts to the games that we're talking about and also help name the episode. And so at the end of the episode, we will give you the runners-up for naming this particular episode. I feel like I said episode a lot just now.
Episode.
So we made it, Alex, by the grace of the board gaming gods. We'll be able to release, hopefully. Oh, knock on wood. Hold on. Okay. We'll be able to release this Feld-mas in July episode actually in July.
Barely.
There was a chance that it wasn't going to be released in time, and still may not. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. We're only a week late.
To be fair, I downloaded Gloomhaven from Steam, the computer game, and it crashed my computer. I completely crashed my computer. Could not restart Windows. Had to reload Windows from scratch. So maybe that could still happen. Who knows? But hopefully, if everything goes well today with the edit, we'll have Feld-mas in July.
This dream was rapidly becoming a nightmare because we just had all sorts of scheduling stuff, and my Blue Icicle messed up.
Yeah, we had a scheduling snafu last week Sunday. So a week ago Sunday, and then another snafu Monday night, and then we were set to record Thursday, and then your equipment failure. Yeah, no, it was kind of a nightmare. But the stuff came. The replacement equipment came for you yesterday. And here we are, ready to rock this.
Are you ready to rock? Let's roll. Hey,
so how you doing?
I'm fine. I'm doing pretty well. It's hot here in St. Louis. It's blazing hot. I am in the throes of preparation for Gen Con 2019.
I'm sure.
From an attendee standpoint, is a lot of fun, and from a publisher standpoint, is a lot. There's a lot that goes into Gen Con. For folks who don't know what Gen Con is, that's the big convention show in Indianapolis every year. It is huge. It is humongous. And I am excited to be up there this next week. I don't know if excited's the right word, but maybe ready to be done with Gen Con. I think that might be the better expression.
It's an exhausting con.
Yeah.
From the one time, and that was just as an attendee. My only involvement with Gen Con, well, I'll be doing some Gen Can't stuff this weekend, but also I'm helping Nick. We're gonna hopefully I need to see if he has time this week. He wanted some help running his Pauper Magic deck, first mention, through its paces. Do some playtesting because he's going to be playing in a Pauper tournament. See what I've done, Alex?
Yeah.
I've corrupted our fair Nick.
That game needs to go away.
What? Jeez. They had their best quarter ever this last quarter. I just heard Mark Rosewater say he's the head Magic guy.
Head Magic man.
Yeah, and apparently it's been like a leading force for Hasbro, so much so that they want to basically double R&D, is what I heard somewhere online. I heard it somewhere. It must be true. If it was online, it must be true.
Of course, the internet never lies.
Yeah.
The other big thing that happened in this meantime, though, is you had SeanCon.
We did.
What?
That's good. No, it's good. You're like, okay, shut up about Magic. No one cares about Magic.
No, we're done with Magic.
Millions of people.
SeanCon, which by the way, we may hear about Magic anyway during SeanCon. I haven't heard this. I haven't heard this segment.
No, we don't hear about Magic because we actually didn't play Magic. Usually, when Ellie and I get together, we might play a little bit of Magic, but with Andy and Mitch there, we don't. Although I will mention that Andy's youngest, I think it's Nicholas. Is it Nicholas or is it Asher? I think it's Nicholas. He's been playing Magic and he's been building decks and much to Andy's chagrin. Maybe we do mention that. But anyway, we had SeanCon. This was the second annual SeanCon, which is now a thing. We made t-shirts. We had t-shirts for SeanCon, Alex.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Maybe this will become the new Gen Con. It's just going to keep growing every year.
Eventually. That's kind of the plan. That's the goal. We're coming for you, Gen Con. From 14 attendees to 70,000. We're almost there. We'll grow in orders of magnitude. But anyway, we recorded a little bit on Saturday night with me, Ellie, Andy, and Mitch, and here it is. Hey everybody, this is Sean, and it's Saturday night of SeanCon, and I'm joined by SeanCon alumni, Ellie Davis. Ellie.
Ooh. Hey guys.
That's Ellie.
Yep.
In case that wasn't clear.
It's me.
And Andrew Heflich, I believe is how you pronounce your last name, is it not?
That's close enough.
So guys, welcome back to SeanCon 2019. As Alex would say, the Sean name.
It could be the Sean Con.
That is what he would say.
Pretty sure that's what I texted you guys.
Is it?
The conning.
Are you conning, I mean? Yeah.
No, I have receipts.
Okay.
So we're also here with first-time SeanCon attendee, Mitch Williams. Mitch, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
So Mitch has never been on the podcast before. So last year for SeanCon 1, both Andy and Ellie were on. Ellie's been on several times. Andy's been on once before?
Yeah,
besides SeanCon?
I went on the boards. I got rave reviews. Ellie did too.
Yeah. But this is Mitch's first appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch I've actually known longer than either of these two fools. Which is, hey, that's where we went to dinner tonight. It was Two Fools.
Two Fools.
Irish pub. Mitch and I met first day of kindergarten at the bus stop.
We did?
That must have been quite a sight. I've seen pictures of you guys when you were that little.
We were adorable.
We were pretty adorable.
Mitch was all head and ears.
I'm still all head. What are you talking about? Like, that's never changed.
So for those that don't know, this kind of sprung up last year because I stopped going to conventions because I'm busy, and so we joked about having people come out around my birthday for a Sean convention, and that's what we're doing, and it stuck for a second year, and we're already talking about the third year, and maybe even expanding it slightly, just slightly. This is very small.
It is a very exclusive group that we invite to this con, so.
I
think we should tighten it up a little further, actually.
So real quick, just want to talk about some of the games that we did, some of the events, and then we have a very special portion at the end, which I'm not going to spoil now, but I'm looking forward to this discussion.
You could say I'm burning with anticipation.
So everyone came in Thursday. Thursday night, and then we had Friday all day and Saturday all day, and then here we are Saturday night. Mitch and Andy, you guys are leaving in the morning. Ellie and his wife Jess, you'll be leaving tomorrow night, so we'll probably get some Combat Commander in the morning at some point.
Something a little two-player-ish.
Yeah. So I'm just going to real quick list off some of the games we played. A lot of these are things that we've talked about ad nauseum on the podcast, so I don't want to spend too much time on them. But some games that we played were Lords of Waterdeep, which I probably haven't played in a couple years, to be honest. And I forget how much I love just the simple worker placement game.
That was my first time playing it, and it's a great worker placement game.
It's a great worker placement game. I'm not a big fantasy Lord of the Ring guy. I loved it.
It's D&D.
Definitely.
Whatever.
Definitely D&D.
I'm not D. See, that's how little I know. I don't do any of that stuff. I thought it was a fantastic game.
And to be clear, there's levels of gamerness here, with Ellie being the biggest gamer of the three, and then Andrew. Sorry, Andrew.
It's fine.
It's okay.
And then Mitch, right?
I'm definitely the most casual of the game.
Yeah, and Mitch, we played Magic growing up, and tons of Axis and Allies, and he's part of this diplomacy group that we've talked on about. But so just kind of interesting to kind of see the different stages of gamer.
I would have said that I was lower than Mitch on the ranking until I realized that Ellie and I play all the time these days. Not all the time, but we used to.
It's, we get together with your kids, and we play games at Snakes and Lattes in Tempe, and it's just a blast game.
Yeah.
So we also got in some Downforce from Renegade Games, Quacks of Quedlinburg, which is one that we reviewed not too long ago on the podcast. And man, this game is fun. It's just there's like a show in it. It's the push your luck game where you're trying to brew potions, and it's such a fun game, and I think it's going to perform really well in the double take next year.
I played with Ellie last week. Ellie taught it to me at Snakes and Lattes. My kids loved it. We played it again this time. It's just a lot of fun. It's the stupidest game in the world. I'm sorry.
No, we're not stupid. We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. We'll get there in a second. Thematically, it drives me insane because it doesn't have to be potions. You could be making soup. It doesn't really make any sense. You're just pushing your luck, but it's a lot of fun.
But it's so much fun just playing this game because everyone's playing the game at the same time. But as you're pulling your little chips out of the bag, you hear other people going and oohs, and it's just super fun.
It's a lot of fun. It's way more fun than it has ever any right to be.
By the way, that ding you just heard, which I'll turn my my phone ringer off, was Alex Goldsmith telling me that he's going to try and fit something in Sunday at 1:30. He's here in town. Actually, he's here in the state. His parents live about 45 minutes north of here.
It was so great to see him this weekend.
Yeah. So we had some festivities Friday night, and then games all day Friday and games all day Saturday. But that's okay. I mean, he gets mad at me for not coming out to St. Louis to visit him. But not bitter.
I heard he was at Empire Thursday before we got there.
Yeah. Yes, stop by on the way to Santa Fe. So we also played The Mind, to say it as Alex would say it, which that is the stupidest game in the world.
No. We're still not there yet.
Oh, we're not there yet?
To the stupidest game.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there.
The Mind is amazing.
The Mind is a great game. So The Mind is something that was Alex's top game of last year, and one of my favorite kind of filler games that is just so much fun. It makes no sense. These great narrative moments that we're just constantly high-fiving each other.
No, I love that because we all know each other really well, how disappointed we are when somebody makes the minorest of mistakes.
Yeah.
Because I think at one point one of us had a 13 and the other person had a 14, and we were visibly angry that somebody would play it. They're separated by one card. So we both had the right idea. Obviously, we were both on the same wavelength, but this sheer disappointment that somebody failed us all as a group.
I think I was very disappointed in you for that.
You guys are disappointed in me for a lot of reasons. I feel like that should be the least of them.
So then, new game that I got to play new expansion, I should say, was Race for the Galaxy with the Rivalry expansion. Have any of you, I know Sorry, Ellie, have you played? Ellie, have you played Race for the Galaxy? Sorry, Roll for the Galaxy.
I have played Roll for the Galaxy,
okay,
but not with any expansions.
Okay, so I love Roll for the Galaxy. It's a 6 for me. This expansion adds these new chunky dice that are like the buildable dice from like Dice Forge, where you're upgrading them. It's really cool. I really liked it a lot. We played a little bit of For Sale. Oh well, I was playing Roll for the Galaxy. You guys are playing Wingspan, which
I think Wingspan. Well, first of all, it's probably one of the prettiest games I've ever seen out there. The artwork's amazing. But one thing I love about it, if you get people that know the game and play it regularly, you could get like a nice, simple engine building game done in like 45 minutes with 4 players. It's wonderful.
So then the other game I'll talk about right now was Pipeline. So we got in a game of Pipeline, Ellie, you, me, and Raquel. I'm not going to go into huge detail about it right now. It's not readily available. We were playing our buddy Matt from Wham, his Kickstarter copy. This is from Capstone Games, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in detail probably on the next episode as it's closer to its actual release at Gen Con. But it is a fantastic route building and economic game, and right now is probably the candidate for me for Game of the Year thus far. It is excellent.
One of the best games I played in the past couple of years.
And while we were doing that, Mitch and Andy, you guys are playing a little Scythe.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite games. We had two first-time starters. It was two first-time players. It was a 5-person game. It was the best performance of Scythe I've ever played. I had 84 points. The next closest person had 49. I love that game, and I don't know. I never played the purple expansion guy before, and it helped that I got the agricultural pull card. So there were so many resources nearby, and it was so easy to get resources. It was a perfect random pull.
So you're saying you took advantage of newer players?
I took advantage of the cards I was dealt, the way any burgeoning little empire would.
So, Mitch, Scythe is one of my top 10 games of all time. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, I understand why. And it was my first time playing this game. What made it super special is that we were playing Jerry Quintana's copy. And he made this amazing job of doing the paint on the individual models. And, of course, going with that overall aesthetic of the game, it was just a beauty to look at. Just a kind of a visual feast. I felt like I was learning the game as I was going. And I started to get a better grasp on overall kind of macro tactics and strategy and stuff like that as I played. But it is a special game, and I would agree that it's one of the best games I've ever played.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's always fun to play on Jared's copies of games because he really blings them out, and the organizers he makes are really sweet. Yeah. So speaking of Andy winning quite a bit,
are we not going to talk about the worst game ever?
I'm kind of leading the discussion here.
Okay.
I've got a whole plan.
I was raising my hand, by the way. You couldn't see it.
No, you couldn't, because that's not how the medium works. So one of the highlights, I think, of gaming for SeanCon, and again, my segue that was so really interrupted, was, speaking of Andy winning, was Twilight Imperium 4. So Friday morning at 8:30, we all met at Empire. We had 2 tables of 4. Actually, a table of 4 and a table of 5. And it was the 4 of us who were on the 4-player table. So 2 twin games of TI4 going. This was all of their first time. Ellie's played TI3 before. And this is probably my 4th or 5th time playing TI4. And this was one of the absolute worst performances I've had, where I usually feel very nimble and I'm able to apply pressure where I need to, and I just fell all off kilter this game.
It also didn't help that you couldn't roll a dice to save your life.
That's true.
That was amazing.
Yeah, I need to put Andy on his back footing with a pretty solid combat that was 80% in my favor, and it was just terrible.
I couldn't miss and you couldn't hit.
I couldn't hit. It was really, really bad.
I wish that was a marketable skill that I could translate into other media, but I don't see it happening.
I would say if there was a branching point in that game, it was that moment. Whenever you rolled so poorly, otherwise you would have been able to keep him off balance, and instead Well, I'm trying to take pressure off Ellie.
We have all agreed unanimously. So by the way, Andy won this game quite handily. He was almost completely eliminated. All of his playing pieces were almost eliminated.
Because I jumped out to 7 points, and I think you guys, the next highest person was 2, maybe?
Yeah,
4. And 4. And everybody all of a sudden turned on me, like you should.
Right.
And I was almost one move away from being completely wiped off the board altogether.
Right.
Yeah, it probably would have happened.
Right.
And the next move, I would have taken your home planet.
Yes.
You wouldn't have been able to get any more victory points.
Anything.
Right.
And I hit I just spent all of my resources to buy strategy and tactic coins, what are they called?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, this is kind of a dudes in space game. It's the 4th edition for Fantasy Flight Games, and it's this big, it's not really a 4X game, but it's you've got the space combat, and you've got conquering other planets. Really long. It took us about, 6 hours, 5 hours?
And the other guys went for almost 12.
Right. And you're trying to score objectives, be the first to score 10 objectives, and there are different ways that you're doing that. Some of it's through combat, some of it's through having certain types of planets under your control. There's some public objectives you can score, there's some secret objectives, and when it looked like Andy was on the ropes, he had just the right secret objective.
Which I purchased that final round.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a public objective that he was able to get for an extra 2 points plus the secret for 3, which took him to the win. And the secret objective is the dumbest one, where it's have one ship in adjacent to an opponent's home star system, and you have this lone little transport all on its own. I had one shot to shoot it down with my planetary defense system that was a 50-50 roll, and I missed.
And the thing about that is, it was so stupid, I didn't even know that you had upgraded your planetary defense.
Yeah.
So I just kind of just kind of wandered in like an idiot into the wrong neighborhood, and luckily you missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mitch, can you tell our lovely listeners why Andrew's win was all Ellie's fault?
I think Ellie might be the best to articulate that. However, I did attack Ellie. And Ellie's race has some special abilities which prevented any significant harm to his fleet, because you saved those. And also, the only damage I took was having my ground troops converted to your side. So literally, you lost nothing in the exchange. I lost nothing in the exchange. And then suddenly, Andrew was a threat. So I was going to pivot against Andrew and hopefully prevent him from keeping.
So that's not the point we lost the game.
But it didn't help.
Yes, attacking me didn't help. The point that we lost the game is I was on a portal with a massive fleet that could have jumped right next to Andy's homeworld. At the point where he was about to start accumulating a bunch of points, and we all knew this. Sean and I had a couple wink, wink, nudge, nudge, sort of unverbal commitments. And there was what's the name of the action at the end of the round?
So there's a politics segment, these agendas that we vote on, and one of them was a directive that if you have ships in a system with a wormhole, you get to research a free technology, but all of those ships get blown up. And we would vote either for or against it. And the way it worked out is Andy had no vote on it. Mitch voted in opposition to Ellie, because Ellie was going to basically lose his large fleet, and I was the speaker, meaning I could break ties, and so
I was the speaker.
Oh, you were the speaker.
I had just taken over.
Oh, right.
In my tactical move, because again, I kept going for the Imperial.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Ellie voted, of course, in his favor to not lose his ships, and I said, well, yeah, I'll break the tie, or I'll vote for you.
Yeah.
But I just need a small concession, because I would have to give up basically an action on the next turn to do that. So I just wanted a small concession. There are these promissory notes that you can exchange. A small, hold on. A small concession. That's all. Hold on. That's all I wanted. Just a small concession. And he flat out refused. And so I said, okay, I'll abstain from the vote.
So not only did he try to twist my arm into it, there was my response was, okay, well, by you abstaining means that I'm going to lose the fleet that's going to get Andy on the ropes and potentially take some pressure off the center. What's the center?
Mechatol
Rex, where you could have had an easier time invading. Instead, you want to get a little greedy. You want a little bit more pizza than your share.
Your fleet had the keys to their own jail cell.
And then
I just needed.
It was especially petty, even by our standards.
And it was quick. There wasn't a ton of negotiation about it, which there should have been. It was like, I'm saving, and I was like,
You're like, fine,
yeah, fine. So that's how I lost us the game.
I was going to say it's passive aggressive, but no, it was really aggressive.
Oh, absolutely.
It was mean.
And then the next turn, Mitch invades me. So I felt a little pressure. I had to push back a little bit, flex my muscle.
It's almost like you got greedy and vindictive instead of thinking about the larger
I defended my areas.
Just for the record, I felt like the 1% watching the poor and the middle class attack each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cute. Yeah.
But we did take an official vote yesterday who was at fault, and by the majority vote was that Ellie is at fault for Andy winning the game.
I voted for myself being the reason that Andy won the game.
But let me ask
1-1.
let me ask you this, Andy. So you had wanted us to play diplomacy,
yes,
which I kind of don't want to do. We had a ton of fun playing it growing up.
Yeah.
And
you never want to do it again.
I kind of never want to do it again, and we'll come back more to that, which we've discussed in many
We're going to
times.
have to play eventually, because Asher, my almost 12-year-old, he turns 12 next week, happy birthday, he wants to play, he sort of sees it as a rite of passage, because he's played a bunch of games, and he's heard me talk about it, and he's heard certain stories about it. So,
Sean would be happy to make him cry.
Yes.
So,
I know.
So, but let me ask you this. Is TI4 a suitable successor, a modern successor?
Sort of, because there certainly is a lot of, for the first portion of TI4, there was almost no confrontation whatsoever. We were just kind of growing and living in harmony, which isn't really something I'm that keen on. I do like high confrontation. So it was fun. It was fun. I do like the political systems and living in worlds with other people. But if I wanted to do that, I'd just play Scythe. Because that's dudes on a map meets worker placements, sort of, where I didn't fight anybody in my victory of Scythe, and I won handily, and I enjoyed it. I'd prefer, if we are going to play a confrontational game, to have confrontation. It's fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's very little confrontation inside.
I know.
Okay.
By design.
I
think that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
He would prefer to
If I'm going to play something
confrontational game.
I thought you were arguing for Scythe over TI4 for that.
Oh, no. I'm saying that if I'm going to play a game that you can have confrontation, but it's not necessary, I'd rather play Scythe.
Okay.
And so I get what you're saying is that you're saying that Asher would beat you at diplomacy. We understand.
If we're going to tell diplomacy games, remember when you stayed at my house for Thanksgiving and we played diplomacy, and you and Raquel, because you couldn't go after me, went after my almost 18-year-old son, Aiden. He was about 15 or 14 at the time.
No, we were turning him against you.
No, you flat out attacked him early and said, if you don't go after your father, then we're just going to make this a very short game for you. And he's like, I love you, Dad.
So, let's talk about one more game before we finish. And last episode, Alex was at Dice Hero Con with our good buddy BJ, who helped him review We're Doomed. And this is a 6 for Alex, a game that he absolutely loves. And
Hold
he
on.
thought...
I need to interrupt. A 6 on your scale.
Yeah, 6 out of 6.
Potential all-time best?
Yes.
6 out of 6.
Contender for the top 10. Contender for the top 10.
Okay.
So this was a game that he suspected I would enjoy quite a bit. There's, it's not really social deduction, but it's a social game. And there are certain games like Coup, Resistance, that's more social deduction, that I am huge fans of. They're usually games where there's an interesting overlap in taste between me and Alex. And based on what I had heard about this game, what I'd read about it, and what he had said, I was fully expecting to enjoy this game. So very briefly, because again, Alex and BJ reviewed this last episode. This is a game where you are trying to get off our dying planet by contributing resources to, I don't know, it's like a generation ship or escape ship or whatever. And however, you may only build a big enough spaceship to house a certain number of players. And so you have to gain influence to make sure you get a seat. There are these events that come up that some are private events, some are public events that can have some rule-changing effects. And ultimately, there's like this coup mechanic where you're either like gaining some resources. I'm saying coup, the card game, where you're either gaining resources or stealing resources or nuking somebody to just completely eliminate from the game. And all of that sounds fantastic. That all sounds like something I would enjoy, especially when you know it's just going to be 15 minutes tops. It's not going past that because you have this big chunky sand timer. Sounds great. What do we think of We're Doomed?
This is the worst game I've ever played.
Well, I'm not going to say that.
This is a terrible, terrible game.
The look on Andrew's face right now is very serious.
And to be clear, coup, which this draws some inspiration from, at least in like the underlying mechanics, is one of your favorite games of all time, is it not?
I play it still with my kids. My kids love coup. I love coup. It's so simple. It's so fun. It's so easy. I will defend We're Doomed real quick. Thematically, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because 15 minutes, I imagine, I've never been in a situation where, I have 15 minutes before the world's going to end.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
Yeah.
Surprisingly. Knowing me, surprisingly. But it is chaotic. There is a lot of new stuff happening at the last minute. So thematically, I thought I would really like it. And no, not even a little.
One of my major problems with the game is that it is frenetic because you have this 15-minute timer. It seems like some of the cards in the rules are written so loosely, however, that there's interpretation and there are problems with applying those rules. And if you only have 15 minutes to get through the game, that poses a tremendous problem. You're stopping and you're trying to read the rule book, the timer's going, it's already starting to alter the game because the rules are not quite tight enough.
One of my main problems with the game, one of my main problems with the game is in the sort of the base game, the different factions are weighted to counterbalance each other. Mm-hmm. So you have a group that can nuke cheap, you have one that can steal cheap, but if someone takes out or an action card eliminates them in the first round of the game, which is horrible,
And common,
it completely throws the game off balance and lets one sort of faction run away with the victory, and they're able to manipulate the game.
There's no check or balance at this point. For an example, I won a game in the second round by someone else drew a card and my faction was raptured up to heaven and I was out of the game. I didn't need a rocket ship to get out off the planet. I win. It is also very interesting that it took no skill. And then second, I won the game, which means I didn't get to play the game anymore, which wasn't that big of a tragedy as it turned out. However, you would think that a good game, it's an interesting mechanic where winning means you stop playing sooner than everyone else.
Yeah, even when you won, you cease to exist in the current plane, right? But you did go to heaven.
Yes, that's true.
Did you say hi to Prince and
no.
David Bowie?
So I will say this. It was not enjoyable. So we played with Matthew. So we had a group of 7, which I think is a decent count to get a good feel for the game. And we played with Matthew, who we knew would not like this game. This is not his style of game. We refer to him as Grumpy Man Matthew. And Matthew was a sport for SeanCon. We went to Dueling Pianos Thursday night. We'll talk a little bit about that briefly. And but he's been a trooper, right, through that, because that's really not his scene. And then playing We're Doomed. And on Twitter, Alex says, "Wait, you let Grumpy Man Matthew play this game? All Sean opinions from this play experience are entirely invalid." And I will say, in Matthew's defense, he did nothing to bring the game down whatsoever. In fact,
Quite the opposite.
He was probably the least vocal in his opposition to this game.
He was more in opposition to the mind than he was this game.
That's true.
He did almost ruin the mind for me because he was purposefully playing it wrong. He's like, I don't like this game, so I'm going to make it unlikable for you too. So Alex does bring up a very fair point. If anybody ruined We're Doomed, it was probably me.
Probably.
Because I didn't like it at all.
I've never played a game where players were asking if they can nuke themselves.
I nuked myself. I was so tired of the game. I nuked myself.
Tired of a 15-minute game.
I know.
Yeah. So it just didn't hit for me. We played it twice. It just I've never really said I will never play a game again. I will never play that game again.
What's interesting with a game like Coup is I feel like there are strong tactical decisions to make. And there's a certain bluffing element, whether or not you're going to call someone out or whatever. Here, I didn't find any sort of interesting decisions to be made whatsoever.
No, it's all role-based. It's exactly as I was saying. There's a series of checks and balances based upon factions, and they're all supposed to operate kind of rote. And if it doesn't happen that way, the game is not exciting.
And I listened to one of your shows where you talked about one of the things you like in games is feeling clever.
I've never said that before, but go on.
There's really no avenue for anybody to feel clever. You're almost supposed to lose every game, and they're actively trying. All the cards are actively trying to help you lose the game, and there's really nothing anybody can really do to stand out and be like, "Hey guys, we won that because of me," or anything like that. It's just chaos, but not fun chaos.
The only standout moment for me was when Chris, our buddy Chris Holm, very mild-mannered, he just threw a card at Ellie and shouted "death to tyrants." And I'm like, what is going on? That is so uncharacteristic for Chris. But
he's really nice.
Yeah, but the card said, throw this at a player and yell death to tyrants, and that player interrupts their action or whatever.
So that's the moment where I said, let's play a second game. Because I was like, well, that first game was a bust, but that was so funny. I want to see this a little more.
I agree.
And then the very next game, the second round, Mitch wins the game and doesn't play with us anymore. And then the game was done.
Can we clarify? Didn't it say on the card that if he threw it at him and missed, that it was invalid?
Yes.
That's a fantastic card. There should have been more stuff like that.
Well, and there very well may be, right? Because we only saw maybe 30 of 100 and some cards.
There's a rule where if you touch your phone, you immediately, some kind of negative action happens to you and stuff like that. Kind of meta stuff beyond the game, but it just didn't work.
The action deck is where the problem lies, right? And I think if there was some more synergy with the cards, if they were trying to get you to a certain place, even working against you, it could have been more enjoyable. But it was so random, and some of the actions were so gotcha that it didn't work for me.
Speaking of cleverness, it felt like the designers of the game were trying to be tongue-in-cheek clever instead of allowing us to be, problem solvers?
There were no meaningful decisions I made in either game we played.
Right.
Is what I felt like.
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk about that game anymore. So I think this was a great SeanCon. We had 15 people go to Cervantes for dinner Friday night. Yep, Friday night.
Wonderful.
Great New Mexican food, and we had a great crowd. Eugene and his wife Candy from the shop were there. Nick and Marissa were there. Rory and Marie were there. Matthew and Jess, his wife Jess, came out, and who am I missing besides
Jessie was there?
Well, yeah, I know Jessie was there. I'm just saying anyway. Then we went to the dueling pianos, which is a lot of fun. That's a SeanCon tradition. Ton of fun. Andrew, you, as always, are fantastic on the tambourine.
I had an audience this time.
You did?
It was a good time, considering I was playing Wounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thoughts on SeanCon 2019? Final thoughts on SeanCon 2019. We're not done, but just
Mitch, you're the rookie.
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
This was an absolute blast. I mean, I need to get up very early in the morning to fly out, and I'm regretting having an early flight. I wish I had scheduled it for later in the day so that I could have some more time to game, because this has just been a blast.
Do you mean like the flight schedule I sent out like a couple months ago that had the times that I was flying out that no one followed suit on? That was great.
I'm leaving a little after noon, and I wish I had booked it, but I got a dog now, so I got to get home and take care of him. He misses me.
Also, he has sons.
Well, they're taking care of they can take care of themselves. They're grown men.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I would just say I really can't wait for next year's con. We're gonna do it again. Mm-hmm. It's a blast.
Yeah. No, it's a ton of fun. We got in. I feel like we got in more meteor games this time around, didn't we?
Yeah.
100%. And I think anytime you're scheduling TI4 into your schedule, that's going to take up a majority of a day's play. And with the group of players that we have that would normally play diplomacy together, I sort of knew that we'd try to get some meteor games in.
Mm-hmm.
Can I point out that as part of the annual SeanCon tradition, I feel like we're building traditions.
Yeah.
We also didn't play Kemet again.
No, we didn't. It was the plan tonight, and I'm very, very sad that we didn't. Well, yeah, no, I think this was a great SeanCon, and I'm excited for more. And I'm so thankful for you guys coming out. Oh, we have cool SeanCon t-shirts.
Ooh, we can all see it, right? We're all wearing the same shirt.
We'll put it on Twitter, maybe.
The one tradition I'm glad we broke is that we're not recording this right before going to the airport.
Yeah, that was really tight.
Yeah.
But what I will say before we wrap this up is we do need to have a brief discussion from a different perspective. What's that Japanese movie where it's the same story from 4 different...
Rashomon.
Rashomon. Yeah, Rashomon. Okay. So last year, and I've told this story before on the podcast about the time we were playing diplomacy like 10 plus years ago, and there was an incident between Mitch and Andy that ultimately resulted in Andy flicking a lit cigarette in Mitch's face as a result of the game. And we've heard me tell the story, we've heard the story from Andy's perspective, and since we have Mitch here, the alleged victim, if you will, I'm curious to briefly hear it from his point of view.
To be very clear, I was not a victim. I was a willing party to this entire encounter because we were playing diplomacy, and I'm sure that everyone who's listening to this is relatively familiar with the rules of diplomacy. Our house rules at the time were you would have a set amount of time for each phase, for the diplomacy phase, for the build phase, for the retreat phase, etc. Now, the issue was, I believe I was Germany or Austria-Hungary, and you were
I was
UK?
France,
Okay.
You were Germany.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we were allied, and we were running the table. We were going to win within, I believe, the next year and a half.
You were England, and we plowed through you.
And to be fair, we have another house rule where if there are 2 people that want to declare an allied victory, because we don't want to spend like 18 hours playing the game. That's not an official rule, but it's something that we've always done.
We didn't want to spend that much time playing the game?
No,
Is that what we decided?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't. We also agreed to be allies, and I think we were probably a year and a half, and we were right there. Andrew, however, decided that he wanted to be the sole victor and have all the glory to himself.
Can I point out real quick?
No, you cannot.
No, you cannot. So, as you can tell, Andrew does like to have the attention on him, so he was going for the sole victory, and so he stabbed me in the back. Now, he was expected home, I think, within the next hour and a half for dinner. He had 2 small children at the time. His wife was calling him, making sure he was going to be there for dinner. We had agreed upon the rules before this happened. I still could use my full time for diplomacy. I could still use my full time for build. Still use my full time for retreat. This meant that for him to get sole victory and get all the victory points from me, essentially, is probably going to take another, I think, 4 years in game time.
8 rounds.
Right. Which is going to calculate out to about 3.5, maybe 4 hours extra of game time if each of those time periods were maximized. I wanted to send a message that in any of these games that we play,
death to tyrants, if you will.
death to tyrants, that it was at this point guerrilla warfare. I wasn't going to win out front in the battle. it was going to be a long-term victory, which is if I say I'm going to do something, and I told you before you stabbed me in the back, I will make this miserable for you. And so I did. And so at some point, Andrew is getting his phone blown up by his wife. By this point, he's late for dinner. He refuses to concede or refuses to go for an allied victory with me again. So, of course, I dig in my heels. I follow Andrew out because he's smoking and trying to burn off the stress, I suppose. And I have nothing to do. I just have time to burn. And so Andrew decided to. He was angry at me at this point and flicked the lit cigarette.
Okay, hold on. Excuse me.
And it was a smug grin on my face.
But how did that happen? It didn't just go from 0 to flick cigarette. Hold on, no. Mitch has the floor.
I remember, and I mean, I don't remember it completely clearly. Apparently, Andrew might remember it more. But I remember him saying, "Like this is ridiculous," and I didn't need to be standing by him at this point. I could have been sitting anywhere inside. Instead, I'm outside in Phoenix in the summer in the heat where you're smoking with a smug grin on my face because I'm very satisfied. I am going to lose, but for the next probably 50 years, whenever we play games, if I say I will do something that has a cost, I will do it. Setting the foundation for the future. So I believe you said something to me about this is ridiculous, like just stop doing this. And I think I might have said some snide remark or just resumed my smug grin. And then next thing I knew.
Yeah, I think...
Hold on. Okay, Mitch, is there anything else you would like to add to your version of the story?
No regrets.
Okay, so Andy, you have 45 seconds. That's all you're going to get. Anything beyond that, I'm just going to edit out.
Okay.
So make sure that what you have to say gets in everything you need to... Got it? You know what I'm saying. You got this. Is it prepared?
Yeah.
Ready? Get set. Go.
Okay, at that moment, when I flicked the cigarette in his face was the definition of punchable. So the fact that he only got a cigarette is lucky for him. He had the smirk like, oh my God, you just never hated another person more in your life than you did right there. Secondly, there's 35 supply centers in diplomacy. Between the two of us, we had like 23. I had, I think, 14. You had 9. I had the advantage. Plus, I was in the rear, so I was more tactically, defensively, for whatever. I figured it might be faster for me to just take the solo. You only need 18 out of 35. Oh, man, was that a mistake? Because I thought it would have been quicker. Anyway, I don't regret anything, and I'm glad he's dead. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, that's time.
Next year, we're going to have the cigarette on. Talk about their
I was just flying through the air. Minding my own.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you again very much. Appreciate that.
Is that the final 45.79 seconds?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, if you want to weigh in on the guild about who you think is more at fault or less at fault.
I committed the action. I'm
as someone that was there, and if Mitch had not used his full time, you probably wouldn't have been smoking outside during that time period.
I'm surprised you let me off the hook, Mitch, to be honest. You're like, no, this was probably my fault. And I was like, what the hell? I did not see that coming.
Well, I did make the decision to make it miserable, not only on you, but for everyone else who's playing the game.
I'm pretty sure Sean and Ellie were having a blast watching.
Oh, it was great.
It was very fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was
what was
totally
your
fun.
friend Aaron?
Oh, Anthony.
Anthony.
Yeah.
He was miserable.
Yeah.
I felt bad about that. However, I will never, ever feel bad about setting a reputation that will follow me for the next however long we play games.
Oh yeah, you're definitely morally superior to me and stubborn.
Walk softly, but carry a big stick.
Mm-hmm.
It's true in Roosevelt's time, and it's even truer in modern day diplomacy.
I'm pretty sure I missed my kid's first steps because I was not
Actually, when I was at my old law firm and we had mandatory Saturdays for the entire firm because we didn't meet firm-wide goals, I missed Chewy's first steps because of a mandatory Saturday.
Woo!
Yeah. So anyway, On that note, thanks again, guys. Andy, thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Can't wait till... Oh, we forgot something. Happy birthday to Mitch and Sean.
Yeah. Mitch's birthday is a year and 2 days before mine.
So, yeah, that was fun. We got into town. Mitch got into town. I'm like, yeah, Sean's birthday. And then in 2 days, it's your birthday. And you're like, no, it's 2 days ago. I'm like, ah!
In Andy's defense, Mitch is not on Facebook to remind us of his birthday. So
This is true.
But I remember yours and yours without Facebook. So I guess I just don't
I
love
also
you.
don't celebrate my birthday. So.
Okay.
So, Mitch, thanks for coming out. Thanks for being on the podcast. I'm only trying to wrap this up like on 5 separate occasions. That's when you could say, like, hey, cool.
Oh, I really appreciate you guys having me, and I can't wait for next year.
Ellie?
it's been nice.
Thank you. All right.
Final notes? Wait, what are we calling this episode?
I think it's called we're wrapping it up.
No, it's called, this is a segment in the greater episode.
Oh, he really gave it a 6 out of 6?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
All-time greatest.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
You know,
remember last year when I
edit that
joked?
part out.
I joked about being Team Alex. That was a mistake.
So, Alex, I know you didn't hear any of that just now. We did poo-poo We're Doomed quite a bit, as the listeners just heard.
Uh-huh.
But we should point out that I got in another play of We're Doomed at the tail end of SeanCon with you on Sunday.
That's right. Yeah, I had heard some of the initial negative thoughts on Twitter through social media, and I said, this cannot stand. Sean needs to play this with the right play group. I maintained that Grumpy Man Matthew, for all of his wonderful characteristics, that is a complete anti-Matthew game. Like, that game could not be more not Matthew. Maybe if it had dexterity elements or something like that. I don't know.
No, he likes dexterity games.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Some
dex. Okay. In any case, I felt you needed the full experience of playing with me, and that play experience I think lived up to the hype. We didn't play with as much as many players as we needed to, but the squabbling between me and you was pretty pronounced over the course of the game. Someone got nuked, so it was a fun experience. But I think you mentioned it didn't really change your thoughts too much.
Not too much. I mean, I agree with you that it's heavily group dependent. I don't think that our save for Andy was the downer for the group. Not Matthew, and I think we mentioned this a little bit in the what everyone just heard, but I do think it was helpful with you that you kind of GM'd it and kind of kept things going. We didn't necessarily have someone doing that in the 2 games that we had played. That certainly would have helped. There was still some kind of uncertainty with the rules as we were getting into it. And I think that there's the capability for fun experiences. And I think that, like, our game was certainly more fun, but it was also somewhat outcome dependent. So I lost. I knew I was going to lose, but through some card play, I managed to convince Raquel and Jess, Ellie's wife, to exclude you from getting on the ship.
Yep.
I forget the exact method, but basically, like, you were guaranteed a seat as long as they played, like, each played a card and, like, voted for the other one, exhibiting some trust.
Yeah.
So that they would be on the rocket and you wouldn't. And I engineered that, and so I was happy with that result, of course.
Yeah. One of these days I'm going to survive in that game.
One day, Alex, and perhaps I will play it with you also again. We'll see. Probably not coming out here at Empire.
Well, that's fine. I mean, if Empire doesn't love it, Empire cannot love it. It's a good con game. I will say that. It can work in other situations, but at its heart, it's best as a con game.
So, Alex, before we move on to the news, just want to give, or maybe this is news. I don't know that it's news, but, last episode that I was on, which was 2 episodes ago, because you had the Dice Tower episode, I had talked about my new commitment to health and losing weight and eating healthy and all that stuff. And I'm happy to report, Alex, that since then, I have lost, in about 5 weeks now, I've lost a total of 20 pounds exactly. And I figure the next 20 pounds will probably be about as easy, and then things will kind of start to get a little bit more difficult. It's going really well. I'm eating healthy. I've been going to the gym just this last week and getting back into the swing of things. So it's going good. And we have a thread over on the guild. What's the name of the thread, Alex?
It is called Champions of Midriff Guard or something like that? Or Champions of Midriff?
Yeah. So there's other members in there that are kind of talking about what they're doing right now and how they're doing and what successes they've had. So if you're interested in, eating healthier and stuff and getting some support amongst guild members, that's the place to do it. So it's pretty sweet. And I'm pretty happy and going to keep working. And that's the update.
Congrats on losing a little less than 10% of you.
Yeah. Is it?
Sure.
No, wait.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me
do some math. 315. 20 pounds.
So 20 divided by 315 is 6%.
Okay.
6.3%.
All right.
So,
well,
all right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. More than 5% of you.
Okay.
Don't quibble with my math, Ramirez.
You rounded up quite a bit.
I did. I was trying to be nice.
I will say that yesterday I did some core exercises for the first time in forever. I did some planks and then I just did some crunches, nothing too crazy, but my abs started spasming.
Oh no.
Like, what are you doing to us? We're not supposed to have this level of exertion.
Gotcha.
It was weird. It was certainly weird.
I went yesterday and tried out Bujinkan, a form of combat martial art, because one of my folks at Monochromatic Wolf also does that. And that is not for me. It's not a thing I'm going to be doing again. I got someone showed me one of the pressure points or whatever else, and I felt that I was like, nope, not for Alex. Not doing that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like an Alex thing.
No, I'm still on the hunt for a new gym opportunity. That will probably have to wait until after Gen Con. But I tried something new. I didn't like it, but I did try something new.
That explains the black eyes, Alex.
Yeah. Anyway, that's about all for recent plays, mostly Sean's recent plays. Let's head on over to the news desk. First up in news, the reason we delayed this episode recording in the first place, which is the Spiel des Jahres and Kennerspiel des Jahres winners got announced. Now, for folks who don't know, these are the big German Game of the Year awards. Some past winners include games like Codenames, and I was about to say Terraforming Mars, but it didn't win. The Exit the Game series, and so this is a big deal. This is usually a pretty good measuring stick. Azul has previously won. This year, in the Spiel des Jahres category, it was just one winning over Werewords and Llama. And this is pretty well in line with what we had predicted. I had said that I thought Llama was likely not going to win this. And and Werewords, I had a hard time seeing winning either, even though that's my favorite of the three. Just one just feels like a kind of a quintessential Spiel nominee. Very, very, very simple, but really good at spreading the hobby. This is one that I've tried with family and really enjoyed. Sean, what did you think about this winner?
Yeah, I think my prediction was just one. I like Werewords the most of the three, but so I think this feels right. It's a good game. It's good. It's fun.
Of those three, if I were introducing a game to newer players, I would probably pick that one over Llama. Now I've played Llama with my family, and they also enjoyed it. So
yeah, Llama's good.
In fact, back when I was home visiting, as we mentioned, kind of at the tail end of the visit, meeting up and playing some games, I got in Llama with them, and I also played another nominee / now winner. I'll spoil it. Wingspan. And this is the one that the hobby cares a little bit more about. This is the Kennerspiel, the connoisseur's game. Wingspan and Stonemeyer Games, Elizabeth Hargrave all win over Detective and Carpe Diem. And this was one that was expected, but there was a little bit of a cynical side of me that said, they're gonna give it to Detective or they're gonna give it to Carpe. There was just something cynical about me that had me thinking that this might not win. But no, sure enough, it took home the top prize, and I think well deserving. Yeah.
Well, and I predicted Carpe Diem would win, the Feld game that I was not crazy about. Sorry to say that during Feld-mas in July, Alex.
Man.
I was not. not crazy about that particular gift from Santa Feld, and but it just seemed like one that was going to win, based on the past and based on, we kind of talked about how Academy Award winners, directors may not get it for the movie they deserve it for, and so they give it to them later for a different movie, and it just keeps shifting out who actually deserves the award, and so Feld was due one. I don't know. And I didn't think Detective was really in the running, even though Detective of the three is my favorite, because that game is good. But I didn't think Wingspan was going to win. I really didn't. Not because it's good. I think it's quite good. It's a high 5, but for some reason it just didn't seem. It just seemed too different. Both Wingspan and Detective seemed too different. Although with Detective there was at least. I guess the Kennerspiel has kind of been experimenting with different types of games, but I really thought Carpe Diem was kind of the classic choice. But I'm congratulations to Jamie and Someyer Games for Wingspan taking it. It's a fantastic game, and it's out almost every Wednesday at Empire.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
It's one that again just looks great on the table. Even little details, and I noticed it again when I was playing this. My mom bought a copy, so we played while we were out there. I taught her the game, and we played a couple of rounds. Even again, the feel of the rule book is just so nice. Every little detail of this feels really well done. So yeah, it obviously turned into a win. And what's interesting, if you're having a hard time tracking down Wingspan, which I think it should be a little easier these days, but if you're still having a hard time tracking down copies, if you go to specialty bird stores, they are now starting to sell Wingspan.
Huh.
I went to Wild Birds Unlimited in Santa Fe, and they had 10 copies. They had 10 copies of Wingspan. Yes, I'm dead serious.
What?
10 copies. I posted a picture on Twitter.
Huh.
Yeah. It's become a thing. Jamie, in talking to him, he mentioned having to deal with them and kind of figure out their mode of selling and kind of what their needs are. But yeah, it was sitting right there next to bird themed puzzles, and to the right of it was a bunch of feeders, and yeah, Wingspan for sale at specialty bird store near you, probably.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I think two winners that will hold up over time. Wingspan definitely has the feel of, a game that will last and be around for a good amount of time. So yeah, not surprising to see it win. And my guess is any future expansions for that thing will just do gangbusters. Yeah, well deserving and well won. So those are the Spiel and Kennerspiel winners, just one and Wingspan. All right. Instead of talking about a full Kickstarter, I wanted to talk about something that I had noticed within the past week or two. Sean, have you heard of Golden Bell Studios?
Not directly, no.
Part of the reason for that is if you look up Golden Bell Studios as a creator on Kickstarter, there's not much listed. They have some plush campaigns and some family campaigns and things along those lines. But what will happen is, it appears that either during the campaign or shortly after, a lot of these smaller creators will talk to Golden Bell, or Golden Bell will talk to them and say, hey, we'll take over publishing for this. We're excited to do it. We'll handle all of the manufacturing and all of that. And all you have to do is take your cut, sit back, and we'll all be fine. That works fine in some cases. Monochromatic Wolf did that with a project, Book of Dragons. It can happen. You can see a publisher step in and take over. But in this case, there have been some issues. So there are a number of campaigns that have had some odd things going on, which I've linked to Sean in the link section here. And some of these are harder to see from the Kickstarter campaigns than others. So this one, Unbroken, a solo game of survival and revenge. This one did really, really, really well on Kickstarter. It made almost $600,000 or somewhere in that ballpark, Canadian dollars, so maybe a little bit less than that. The creator was listed as Artem Safarov. Golden Bell, though, was handling a lot of this stuff, and while they were fulfilling U.S. orders, or sort of shortly before, they came to backers and said, hey, So we miscalculated our shipping prices.
Ooh.
We don't have enough. We're not saying you have to pay us more, but here's a link where you can pay us more if that's something that you'd like to do out of the generosity of your heart.
Okay.
And some backers thought that was shady, and there were some comments and discussions and back and forths. If you go to Board Game Geek, there have been a couple of threads of one of the backers claiming they used the phone number provided in the shipping area to start threatening them after they posted too many negative comments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's some text message exchanges going on there. There was another comment where someone where Golden Bell called out someone for being a middle school principal. And there was just subtle threats, and it got weird. It got weird on that campaign really quickly. So that's one example. That's not the most egregious one, though. We've had a couple of other things that have happened. One is the Krilling Field, which funded at a much, much smaller number. That one was picked up by Golden Bell and then just outright killed. They just canceled the campaign and said, hey, we're refunding everyone. We don't have enough minimum order quantity. Basically, when you order something from a factory, if you order at a certain amount, the more you order, the cheaper your price is. But there's usually a minimum number that you have to order at. Otherwise, they won't make it. They're not going to make you 5 copies of a game. If you want to do that, you should go to the Game Crafter or someone else here in the U.S. They just outright canceled that and refunded everyone. Okay, disappointing for backers, but at least in theory, they got their money back.
Well, do we know that they did?
That's a good question. You'd have to look at comments and get a better gauge of that.
Okay.
But there's another campaign, Sean. I'm going to skip this other one that would have you think maybe that's not always the case. So this is one called Peasant Buffet, I believe is the name of it, from Wargy Studios. And Sean, I linked you to a specific post, and I want to take a pause here in the recording while you read this specific post.
So, Alex, I have read it, and essentially they're saying, hey, sorry for the delay. The game, Wargy, is in stock and ready to ship.
The plushes, to be clear, not the game. These are plushes.
Oh, the plushes.
Yeah, the plushes. So there were 2 things associated with this campaign. There was the game, Peasant Buffet, Bad Moon Rising, and then there were these Wargy plush dolls, which were basically corgis.
A war corgi.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
So those were made. They made a ton of those, and they have those in stock, ready to ship whenever. Unfortunately, the game itself has not been made yet.
Right.
And also, sorry, we were offering free shipping here in the U.S., but now we need to charge you $25 each.
$25 and slightly higher for overseas is what they say.
Yeah. Well, overseas had already been paying some amount in shipping ahead of this. But yeah, a printed copy, $35 was what that would have run you. So add in the $25 shipping, and you have some unhappy backers, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
In comments, Golden Bell has been trying to defend itself, saying, "Look, we undermanaged the budget, but here's how all this money was spent. It was a small campaign, $10,000 campaign, but basically, yeah." They, as far as I can read, comments are denying refunds in this situation and saying, if you want to still get the game, or sorry, if you prefer, don't want to pay the additional shipping, just tell us you want the plush. We'll send you the plush for what you pledged for the game. Fine by us. Yeah. And then there was a comment that implied that the games might not be made if not enough people went in there and pledged enough for the shipping. So yeah, this went pretty sideways pretty fast.
So it's interesting because they're taking on a role of saying we're going to give the original creators, Kickstarter runners, a cut.
Yep.
Which presumably is a lower cut than that creator may or may not have anticipated, because they're basically paying a premium to have someone else finalize the game and deliver it to backers. And at the same time, if you are the company that is doing that from start to finish, you realize that, this little thing, that's going to eat into our profits. This thing has changed with shipping, that's going to eat into our profits, and that's that. In this case, they've already made the expenditure to the original creators, it sounds like.
Right.
And so now they've misjudged things, and it sounds like they're going to have to pay out of pocket unless they take these actions. Which just sounds like they're really bad at business.
Yeah, well, so they mentioned in one of the comments they should have had a $15,000 goal, but because they thought, $10,000 would be no problem. To be clear, I believe the Kickstarter had a goal of 1,000. So the goal was, I think way lower. Even if it was 10,000, though, they admit their goal should have been higher. They also said we spent some money on ads, and those didn't really return very well, which can absolutely happen. I can't tell you how many campaigns I've seen that I know what the pricing is for what they're spending on, and I see the return, and I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to go very well for you. So yeah, not great, not a great situation.
And it seems like for a Kickstarter consumer, you have no idea if this is going to happen to a project that you've backed. I mean, so I guess that's now a risk, and a risk that you have to assume if you're going to back a smaller project, if it's not a CMON or a Monochromatic Wolf Kickstarter.
Right.
So now it's like, okay, well, they may basically sell the rights to fulfill this to a third party, and I have no input, no say. That was never disclosed. That was the plan. And now I may or may not get the game, or I may have to pay ransom, because that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, this isn't even something where Kickstarter backers, as you mentioned, could have really been super aware, but it's now something to be aware of, because it's happened with 3 or 4 different projects now where some odd shenanigans have gone on, but under a creator's name that's hard to track or penalize. I mean, if they penalize, Wargy Studios LLC on their future Kickstarters, that doesn't really affect Golden Bell.
No.
So, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. There may be more campaigns that they're tied to that I'm unaware of, but even just those handful of examples alone were enough for me to be like, "Ooh, this is interesting." So, yeah.
Huh.
But as always on Kickstarter, buyer beware. Buyer beware. So that's a look at Kickstarter for this time around.
So hopefully you're listening to this close to Gen Con, before Gen Con, because we want to tell you about one of our fantastic publishers, Arcane Wonders. They are certainly going to have a presence at Gen Con, Alex.
Yeah, they are. They're going to have a big booth. Maybe some giant Onitama. I don't know. They've done that in the past.
Yeah, so if you want to find Arcane Wonders at Gen Con, go over to booth 841. They're going to have some early is the keyword there, and limited, another keyword, copies of Dragon Scales, Architectura, and Volcanic Isle. All expected to be highly sought after, so make sure you head over there as quickly as possible. They'll also be doing demos of Smartphone and Foundations of Rome, which is pretty interesting. And hey, in addition to visiting them at booth 841, you can also go on over to the Mikado, which is a Japanese restaurant where they're going to be doing Onitama at Mikado. So nice little Arcane Wonders get together. You went a couple years ago, didn't you, Alex?
I did. I've been to that event before. It was a lot of fun.
So that's Arcane Wonders over, again, booth 841 over at Gen Con. Go say hi and tell them that the Duke sent you.
Game Toppers, our good friends there, have finished up their Kickstarter, but they will too be at Gen Con. And they'll be in a lot of places at Gen Con. They'll be over at Renegade's booth. You can find them at Arcane Wonders. You can find them at Red Raven, CMON, Academy Games, Capstone Games, one of your favorites there, Sean. Yeah. Eagle Griffin Games, TMG, Quick Simple Fun, and even Monochromatic Wolf. Play Experiences. You can find Game Toppers all over there because, hey, they make a fantastic topper. So if you want to go check out their games demoing on those tables, you'll have a chance to scoop up a card, and that card will get you an entry to possibly win a $1,000 Game Topper system of your very own. Yeah, buddy. So if that's something that sounds of interest, You can go to Game Toppers LLC. They have all of the various publishers that these toppers will be at. But honestly, if you're at Gen Con anyway, they'll be hard to miss. They're at so many places.
But let's say, Alex, that you're not going to be at Gen Con and you miss the Kickstarter. Oh man, what are you going to do? Well, you can still do late pledges until August 25th to get your own game topper to enhance your gaming experience on your drab kitchen table.
Game Toppers LLC. You can find out more at GameToppersLLC.com. Oh, oh, oh. Merry Feld-mas, children. Do you hear that? Sounds like point salad bells are ringing. This week we're talking about Forum Trajanum by me, Santa Feld. Ho, 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 ho. Merry Feld-mas.
All right, so Alex, did you know that Christmas in July? I thought it was just this cynical like marketing thing, but it's not. There's it actually kind of has an extensive history. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
So I had looked it up. Well, I looked it up Thursday night before we recorded. I don't have the page open anymore, but basically there were some like in some places in the Southern Hemisphere, they would actually celebrate Christmas in July so that Christmas coincided with winter, because that was kind of what was popularized as the way to celebrate Christmas. And it was also done from like a religious standpoint too, not just in Southern Hemisphere, but in Northern Hemisphere. Like there were churches in the 20s and the 40s that would decide to like introduce some Christmas stuff into their sermons in July, and they were calling it Christmas in July. And then eventually, like all things, that gets co-opted by marketing and commercialism. So yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear it's not too commercially tied in, but I don't know.
Well, yeah. So anyway, Forum Trajanum is one of the newer Stefan Feld games that has come out recently. It's published in the US by Stronghold Games. And in it, you are playing a Roman leader of some sort, trying to build your influence in the Forum, and also trying to build buildings in your colonia board, your colonies, I suppose it is. And you're doing this through picking some tokens off your colonia board, kind of doing a draft, a little mini draft, getting bonuses from these tiles, and then building buildings on your board and putting out corresponding things on the forum board. So let's go through it briefly here. So basically, it is a point salad because that's what Feld games are. And the way it's set up is there is a large player board in the center that has this Roman forum, presumably the Forum Trajanum, in the center. There are collections of squares on these modular tiles. So there'll be a couple of blue squares together, a couple of red squares together, some yellow squares together, some green squares. And based on how you put the modular board together, it might make them, contiguous sections of 3 or 4 or 5 or more. There's also these Roman eagles, these aquillas, kind of sprinkled throughout the boards. There's also a score track around the board because that's what you need for a good point salad game. And then there's 3 other tracks that you will advance on and get some bonuses from when you build certain types of buildings, because tracks are also a very Feldian item. Now, the way that the turn is structured is simultaneously you're going to choose 2 of your envoys from your colonia board. And the way your colonia board is set up is, I believe it's 7x7. It's a 7x7 grid, and you have these, I think it's like 25 different, maybe it's like 30 different envoys covering all of the spaces on your board, except for there's a couple of dead spaces that are these pre-existing buildings, and then on the 4 corners there are different colored construction spaces. And so each turn you're picking 2 to pull off. This is going to let you clear areas for you to build buildings on, but you're limited in terms of how you or which of the envoys you're able to pick. Basically, at the start of every round, you're going to flip over 2 cards, which are going to give you which columns and or rows which the two of them that you're able to pull from. Sometimes you may have to pick from 2 rows or 2 columns or one of each. And there's some ways to mitigate that, but that's the big limiting factor there. So then you take a look at the 2 that you've picked, you decide to keep one and pass it to the player on your right. Now, on the back of these things, it's going to give you different workers, or it's going to give you money or some other bonuses. And so that's where you're making the decision. You then get passed another one from the player on your left, and ultimately you're choosing of these 2 that you now have, which one you're going to use. So when it's your turn, you're going to flip it over, say, this is the bonus I'm getting. It is, let's say, a color worker. So there are 4 colored workers that correspond with the 4 colored buildings you're able to build. There are gray workers that let you build these gray buildings. They're going to move you up those tracks I mentioned. There are these white workers. I think they're called them. No, I can't remember what they're called. We just called them the white guys and the gray guys and the brown guys. But they give you, they help you mitigate the choice of columns and rows. Also, you can discard 2 of them to get both benefits of both of your tiles that you have kept. And then there are the brown workers, which can be used to basically have a red, blue, green, or yellow worker substitute for a worker of a different color. So you'll get whatever bonuses, and then you're allowed to build up to 1 building a turn, and it's pretty simple. If you want to build a red building, you need 1 red worker. If you want to build one of the gray track buildings, you need a gray worker. And if you want to build a combination building that is red on one of the squares and then the gray building on the other, you need a worker of that color plus the gray worker, and that builds you 2. So whenever you build a color building, you will place it on your Colonia board, and you will also then be permitted to place one of your envoys on one of the red sections of the forum board. The rule here is if somebody's already placed something in a particular color section, you have to keep placing in that section until that section's completed. So you can't have multiple red sections going at once necessarily. There's a rule that lets you get around that. When you build a gray building, that's what moves you up one of the particular tracks that correspond to that particular gray building. That's going to give you bonuses like extra workers or money or sometimes points. Now, the reason that you care about where you're placing the buildings on your Colonia board and where you're placing your envoys on the forum board is because it relates to end of round scoring. So on your Colonia board, you're going to score points based on certain end of age objectives that you fulfilled for placement. So like, for example, those pre-existing buildings I mentioned on the Colonia board, you might have a card that says score X points for every color building that is diagonally adjacent, or score X points for every vertical color, gray color combination of buildings that you have on your Colonia board. And the amount of points you score is either 3, 5, or 7, which is dependent on how much you've moved up this Trajan track. There's this little slide bar, and certain actions will let you advance it. And the farther you advance it, the more points you get for completing these end of era scoring objectives. Also, the cards have not just the arrangement of your Colonia tiles, but also if you have certain number of resources, certain number of colored workers, money, etc., you can also score points for that. Now, the reason you care about how you have your placement of envoys on the forum board is, first, you're going to get a point for every envoy of yours that is orthogonally adjacent to an eagle. Then you're going to score points for how many of your envoys on the forum board, the biggest single section that's contiguous, how many of them that you have. And again, that's going to correspond to that sliding Trajan scale that hopefully you've developed that's going to give you more points for the collection of workers. You're going to do this for 3 rounds, and throughout you may or may not be advancing your skills. There's this little thing on the side of the board, of your Colonia board, that as you place certain things on them, these are the backside of the envoys, they're going to give you some little ways to break the rules. So for example, there's one at the top that If you have that covered, you're going to be able to score diagonally in the forum, not just orthogonally. Also, it lets you break the rule for saying if there's already a red section started, you have to place in that red section. No, now you can place in a different red section if you'd like. Additionally, I forgot to mention, depending on how much you've advanced these different areas will affect scoring for the gray buildings on your Colonia board, because in each row, you're going to score a certain number of points based on how many different types of gray buildings are in that row. So if I have like 3 vase buildings, those are all the same. I'm only going to score one point or depending on what my scoring factor is. But if I have, 3 different types of buildings, I'm going to score more. Oh man, describing point salads, Alex, is rough.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the interlocking pieces, you have the different areas. Yeah, I get it.
So there's a couple little things I've left out, but that's probably longer than it needed to be. But hey, I'm nothing if not thorough.
You are thorough enough to get the job done.
So Alex, what were your initial expectations for Forum Trajanum?
Well, what's interesting about this one is you had played it first and then kind of told me about it. So my expectations were kind of based off of your experience, if that makes any degree of sense. I had, in looking at the layout and setup of it, I had expected this to be a pretty standard Feld. And from what I'd heard, I was probably pretty right. Pretty point salad-y, satisfying if you like that kind of game. And yeah, that's what I'd heard. It was a pretty solid Feld, and those were my impressions. What about you before you played it?
Yeah, so before I played, of course, it's called Forum Trajanum, which is tied into Emperor Trajan. And there's another Feld game called Trajan. In fact, it's in my top 3. It goes Castles of Burgundy, Bora Bora, Trajan. And so there was initially a lot of speculation. Oh, is this sort of a successor to Trajan? It turns out, no, it's not. I mean, it really has nothing to do with Trajan other than some slight theming and obviously the name. And so that was kind of what I was hoping for before more details came out about it. But I figured, yeah, I understand it to be a little bit heavier in terms of Feld games. Ultimately, I think that was incorrect. I don't think it's a super heavy Feld. It's certainly not as light as Carpe Diem, but it's not as heavy as, say, Bora Bora or Trajan. And even, I mean, from my perspective, I don't even necessarily consider those heavy anymore, but I think most people might, or heavier, medium heavy. To me, Forum Trajanum was probably a little bit more on the medium side, and I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit heftier than that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair impression.
So, but I had reasonable expectations. Of course, I was quite not pleased with Carpe Diem, but I figured, yeah, there's definitely more meat on the bones here, and I expected to like the game.
Okay. Let's talk about the rulebook. Did you learn this game from the rulebook, Sean?
I did not. So I got the majority of my plays, Alex, I don't know, 2-3 months ago.
Yeah.
I've played this game 6 times now, 5 or 6. And like I said, I got the majority of plays a while back. I believe Eugene taught us the rules initially. And I think it's a decent rulebook. There's really not a lot going on here. Like, it's kind of a simple game in some ways. Even with something like Castles of Burgundy, you have a pretty simple rule set, but it's complicated by all the special abilities of the different buildings and all the special abilities of the yellow technology tiles. And this doesn't really have that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that extra layer. And so I think that because of that, the rulebook is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's decent for referencing. There's not really a big need to reference stuff because, like I said, it's a pretty simple rule set, even though it probably sounded like I was rambling in the rules explanation.
Well,
but
once you understand
once you
understand the language of the game, which is true for most any game, but this one had a couple of instances of, Oh, that's how that works? Oh, okay. And then once you know that, everything kind of flows from there and it's fine.
Sure.
But yeah, it can take a little bit of time to grapple with that, but I feel like the rulebook laid it out pretty well and made it a decently easy game to learn.
And how did you learn to play the game?
From the rulebook.
It was satisfying rulebook for you.
It was satisfying. I was able to learn and play the game. It's one of those rulebooks. It's one of those games where when you glance at it, it's hard to see how the pieces all fit together. Sometimes you can just see a game or see how it's laid out and understand a mechanic if you've played enough games. And this is not the case with this game. It took a little bit of reading through and having them walk you through the whole game to really get your mind wrapped around it. But once you did, that first play we had was pretty fine once we got moving.
Okay.
So, I think it was a successful rulebook.
So what about art and components? I guess start with the art, Alex.
Bleh. Bleh.
What's wrong with the art?
There's nothing wrong. It's just kind of it's boring. I don't know. It's not. It doesn't excite me. There's nothing about the look and feel of this game that excites me. But that being said, I have that expectation with Felds, right?
Sure.
I have an expectation with a Feld that in more often than not, they won't look very good, and that's okay.
So you've got a box cover with some sort of Roman consul or general or something, kind of looking off into the distance, because that's what you do with Euro games, Alex. That's how you do it. And then you've got this like Trajan obelisk in the background, and I think that looks good. I mean, I think compare this to Castles of Burgundy or Carpe Diem in terms of the actual art and graphic design, and this is far better than that.
Certainly compared to Carpe Diem, this it pops a little bit better. It's certainly a colorful game, at least. I'll give it that. It's still boring to me, but unlike Carpe Diem, where this was definitely a drawback, this wasn't a drawback with this game.
Okay.
What did you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's decent. I mean, I agree with you. There's nothing that's mind blowing here, but that's also not what I'm looking for necessarily in a Feld game. You know, for me, Feld games are about mechanics, but hey, if you can add a little spice into the mechanic soup, or I guess mechanic salad, then by all means, let's do that. So, but no, I think that this was, I guess we'd call it a competent art production. Like, it all looks good.
Speaking of spice, have you had chili lime seasoning from Trader Joe's?
No, I have not.
I strongly recommend chili lime seasoning from Trader Joe's. It goes well with just about anything. I've recently been eating it with apples. So you just sprinkle a little bit on an apple and enjoy the chili lime seasoning. It's so good. But it goes great on fish and other things. And anyway, that's the spice I'd recommend to throw into any salad. Chili lime.
And if you're hard pressed for time and need a quick meal, why don't you head on over to Trader Joe's at the end of the day, and they'll help you get what you need to cook something up healthy for your family. That's Trader Joe's, provider of fine foods and drinks.
Man, I love that Trader Joe's. I'm glad they're definitely not paying us for a sponsorship right now, but
Forum Trajanum, Alex.
Sorry, Forum Trader Joe's is components. Are we on components? The component section of this now? Sure, why not?
Yeah, we sure are.
So the little figures work pretty well. The scrolls stack pretty decently. There's a component that seemed unnecessary, where you're basically building a column round to round, and the number on top of the column is how much what's that benefit? That there's a certain benefit that you get that decreases in value.
It's the non-track track.
That's it. Yeah.
For building one of the gray buildings.
Right. So that kind of builds up over the course of the game, and you get more points or fewer points as the column grows taller.
Right.
It kind of worked, I guess. I don't know. Again, this is in the category of it does what it needed to do for me. Did you have any big complaints?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think like the iconography was pretty clear. The only issues we had were with some of the end of round objective cards. Some of them were pretty straightforward, but you needed a little bit of clarification, but wasn't too big of a deal. I mean, you have a bunch of these envoy / scroll chits, but I think they're fine, and I think the art on them's fine. And ton of wooden meeples of all different colors, and I think, I don't know about for colorblind purposes, but for me at least, they were easy to distinguish because it's bright 4 colors plus the white, brown, and gray. So yeah, I think overall the production on it is pretty solid. There are one downside is there are 4 player aids, and it's a 4-player game. However, 2 of them are in English, and 2 of them are not. So really, there are 2 player aids if you only speak English or don't speak the languages that it also comes with. So not the end of the world, basically, in my last 4-player game, because I played another game Wednesday night and I'm glad we actually didn't record the podcast before then, because I had forgotten quite a bit about it, and I realized I don't know that I could speak too intelligently about this game unless I play it again. And so we played a 4-player game, and we just shared 2 people on one side shared one, the 2 people on the other side shared another. Kind of annoying. Like, just print some more. Can you do that, please? It's a 4-player game. Give us 4 player aids. And it's not even on like cardstock. It's like little, I guess it is cardstock, but it's not thick cardstock. It's not chipboard. It's just it's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah, anytime I see that sort of flyer paper in games, it kind of is a reminder of, you probably shouldn't be printing on this ever.
How much would it cost to have 4 more of those? Because you would need 2 more for the foreign language and 2 more for English. How much do you think that would add to the cost per unit, Alex? Oh, wise voice of publishers.
Pennies.
Yeah.
Which is not 0.
Sure.
But for most print runs, it's not going to be significant enough for you to, like, maybe a penny, honestly. It's really not that much. You could just print it on the same kind of cardstock that you might print other stuff on, and if you're already printing a number of cards that way, unless you hit a certain number, oftentimes it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, they should have done better.
So at 5 cents, let's say it's 5 cents.
Yeah.
For a 10,000 print run, that's an extra $500.
Again, not nothing.
Not nothing. Not an insignificant amount.
And honestly, I think a nickel per is probably more than it actually would have cost.
Right.
I'm literally talking like a penny or 2.
Yeah.
So
if it's a penny, then it's $100, $100,
yeah,
$200
sure.
if it's 2. So, well, okay.
All right. Gameplay.
Yeah.
So how did this hold up gameplay wise for you? Because that's where Feld games live or die, right? The art graphics, it is what it is, but how fun is this thing to play?
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad that I played it again, because I think it dropped off a little bit for me. It's almost like it's like a partial double take, because there was a good amount of time in between. And my first sets of plays, I mean, I enjoyed it quite a bit, and especially after Carpe Diem. Man, I keep harping on Carpe Diem. But it's certainly closer to what I expect of a Feld game than, say, Carpe Diem. And I liked it quite a bit. And if I had scored it at the time, I probably would have given it a high 4.
Okay.
We'll see where I wind up, but I think the replayability might be an issue, because like I mentioned with a game like Castles of Burgundy, you have the variability of different player mats, and then also just the order in which the buildings come out, and the special abilities of the buildings, and the special rule-breaking abilities of the technology tiles. Here, there's really nothing that does that, except, I guess, if you're upgrading your types of your abilities on the side, I suppose. And I guess, I mean, it sounds like I'm saying this game isn't complex enough, and that's in and of itself not fair, I think.
You could be saying 2 different things, right? Because a game can be not complex, but variable.
Sure.
A good example of that would be something like Sushi Go Party.
Okay.
Where there's a lot of different things you can mix into the game to make it variable, but it's not a very complex game. Whereas a game can be very complex and not variable at all.
Sure.
So,
well, but I'm also saying with a game like Castles of Burgundy, I think that variability adds to the complexity and adds to the decisions.
I mean, it does that in Motainai too.
Sure, and I think that in Castles of Burgundy, you have a bunch of decision points that are spread out, or no, sorry, not spread out. You have a bunch of decision points that are concentrated in few choices. In this game, I feel like the decisions are spread out amongst, or the, I don't know how to put this, the importance of those decisions are spread out amongst multiple actions on your turn. So like when you're choosing which of the envoys you're trying to pick, you're saying, okay, I need to figure out which spaces I need to open up in order to potentially build things. Do I want to try and get 2 spaces that are adjacent so I could potentially put down a 2-tile building? Or do I need to worry about this endgame scoring or end of round scoring? We didn't really mention also, but there are the construction corners that also have envoys on them, but they're revealed to show what bonus you get. And when you take those, you open up that construction spot. You're not able to build anything there, but at the end of that round, whatever color construction spot you've revealed that turn or that round, you're going to score a certain number of points for each corresponding color of building that you have on your Colonia board. So there's some decision points there, but then there's not really much of a decision in term. I guess there's the decision of which of the tiles I'm going to use.
That's what I was going to.
A certain number of workers.
Yep.
Or I need money to pay because you have to feed the people on your sideboard. So there's a decision point there. But then once you've done that, usually you know what type of building you're going to build, and so it just seems like the decisions are kind of diffused over multiple decision points,
that
as opposed to being super concentrated in a couple things in Castles of Burgundy that are very consequential. Does that make sense?
Sort of. There's something to be said about the power of decision making. A game that I was going to talk about if we didn't have this be SeanCon week and have that massive segment is this game I played recently at Jamie's called King of Siam.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2007 game. Plays really quick, looks really, I mean, it's a 2007. It looks drier than a lot of games, just has cubes. But it's a game where you have 8 cards. And on your turn, you're either going to play one of those cards or you're going to pass. And once you play out all 8 of the cards, you take no more meaningful decisions in the game. And the game plays out over a series of scoring rounds that will evaluate different areas for area control. You're not any one thing. You sort of gain influence in things as the game goes on. And the whole idea of the game is to manipulate. And because you have so few cards to manipulate the board state, those decisions become incredibly powerful. They become incredibly meaningful. Do I play this card now and try and fight here? Or do I lay back and hope I have enough strength to manipulate the board to in a satisfying way? And yeah, Forum Trajanum sometimes has decisions that can feel weightier, but you're right. With Castles of Burgundy, part of what makes that game so great is you have decisions that feel like they are game-altering or game-changing just about every round. Do I use this 4 to scoop up this other tile, or do I start building here to get more ships or complete this area before the round ends? Or is this better for me? Can I wait a little bit, or is someone going to beat me to this mine? And in this one, the most interesting decision you make, and you make it pretty consistently, is which tile do I pass and which tile do I pick, ultimately, out of the ones that come my way. And that's the most interesting part of this game to me, Sean. I thought that was a decision that actually worked really well and proved meaningful in a lot of cases. In some cases, I found occasionally later game, those would feel less important because you kind of knew what you needed to do regardless of what came up.
Right.
So, yeah, I could see what you're saying. It almost feels like that the power of the decision is diffused more. It doesn't feel as weighty sometimes. Yeah. That was my experience as well.
So, but yeah. So, what did you think of gameplay?
I mean, on the first play, it felt like a nice interconnecting Feld. It was a breath of fresh air. Carpe Diem felt fine. It just felt kind of on a slightly lighter side, and the graphic design of that had turned me off so much. This one felt like a complete package and a complete Feld game, and one where you're making interesting decisions, you're moving on different tracks, and ultimately, though, it didn't live up to the best of Feld. It was quintessential Feld. It felt like a Feld, but it wasn't the best of Feld to me.
Yeah,
and so I don't know. It's a tricky one to recommend. I think for a first-time Feld player, this would be a really good way of seeing whether you like his games or not. But at the same time, it's not Castles of Burgundy is not so much more complex or difficult that I wouldn't just start someone there. So part of the problem that this one runs into is I don't know if it does anything special enough to keep it around.
Yeah. Did you find that there were divergent strategies, different paths to victory in the game?
Yeah, there could be. There could be. I mean, depending on whether you really want to hammer home that big forum area and really work on your area control, that could be really beneficial. I've got my butt whooped more than once by someone kind of going down that path, but it does feel like you have to do at least a little bit of everything. I mean, moving that slide at the top of the board was pretty effective in a couple of cases for me. What did you find?
Yeah, I think so. Because it was funny. We had in this last game, I was going nuts putting envoys on the board, and I had huge contiguous sections. Almost all of them were scoring points. Because I had the ability to let me score diagonally in addition to orthogonally adjacent to the Eagles. And I had like 9 contiguous. And so I was getting good points for being adjacent to the Eagles. And I was getting decent points for the contiguous envoys, but I hadn't moved my scale up too much. And so it was fine. I was getting solid points. Adam at the table, he had like 3 guys. But he had his scale not only maxed out, slid all the way to the right, but you could also upgrade it by flipping it, and it gets a little bit better. And so he had his 3 guys on the board, which was like maybe a point or 2 in terms of the Eagles, but then he was getting like max points for basically we were scoring almost the same amount of points, even though I had like 3 times the number of envoys on the board as him. Which was pretty interesting. But I also think that you really got to play to those end game or end of round scoring, because there are some decent points that come in there. You could also do things to kind of spam some points early on by building the gray building that's worth 3 points in that first round. So I mean, I think there are definitely some options, and you're kind of playing with what abilities you have, with what tokens come up.
Yeah.
But I think if you ignore 2 or more of the 3 end of round scoring in some way, shape, or form, you're gonna have some issues, I think.
Well, because of the nature of when certain things come up, when different types of tiles come up, and the intersections and where those form and what that looks like, you do have to adjust on the fly.
Right.
It's not like a Castles of Burgundy where everything's dealt out at the start of the round and you can kind of see. And I guess there's some luck that comes in with the roll of the dice, but that's usually mitigatable enough that you'll have things you can do and you can kind of plan around and focus on a strategy. This one, because that happens so often and the order of it can be impactful in how you build out that board, it can lead to some tricky decisions.
Right.
I wasn't blown away by it, but I didn't hate it either. Right. It wasn't. It's certainly not the worst Feld I've ever played, and it's pretty standard Feld. So I don't know where that leaves it ultimately.
What play counts did you get in?
2 and 4.
Okay.
Not 3.
Any thoughts on the difference?
I think I had the most fun with it at 2. Interestingly enough.
Huh.
Yeah. It's a smaller board to battle on for area control, but the tiles that you pass and what you keep becomes actually pretty interesting in that circumstance.
Sure.
So I think I liked it at 2 the best. What about you?
Yeah, so I played it at all 3 player counts, and I'm not a big fan of 4. I like it quite a bit at 3, and I agree with you. It plays well at 2. There's a lot of Felds that play well at 2, and I think this is definitely one of them. Definitely, I was paying more attention to what I was passing in 2 players than I would in 3 or 4.
Right.
I probably wouldn't necessarily care in 3 or 4, but at 2 players, I was definitely keeping an eye on it. But yeah, I would say 2, 3 is the sweet spot. 4 was a little slow. I've played it 4 times, like 2 or 3 times now. And I really, really think it's good at the lower player counts.
Yeah, I think it's one that succeeds. And because the most interesting decision to me is in those tiles and what you pick for the round and what you're activating, because that's emphasized more at 2 players, I think that's why I like that player count better.
Yeah. Well, I think we had just 1 or 2 thoughts on the guild, Alex.
Theme. See, you skipped right over it.
I know, because that's what we do with Feld games, Alex. We skip over the theme.
Did you feel this game was thematic, Sean?
No.
Okay,
No.
I didn't either. Yeah, fair.
So we had a couple thoughts in the guild, Alex.
Yes, we did. Start us off.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I own a copy of Forum Trajanum, but have only played it once. I'm always looking for the Feld that I will like better than Castles of Burgundy and Aquasphere. BJ, you're half there.
He's not half there.
Don't mention Castles and Aquasphere in the same breath, BJ. Gah. Anyway, but Forum Trajanum is not it so far. But I like the puzzle it presents, and unlike some other Felds I have tried, I definitely want to play it again. On a scale of 1 to 6 Felds, I'd give it a 3 Feld, but I could see it going up to a 4 Feld upon repeated plays.
Phil Hendrickson says, after 6 plays, I think Forum Trajanum is interesting, but never gets exciting. You don't really build an engine. The decision of what benefits to pass to your neighbor is better implemented in Notre Dame. As a collection of mechanisms thrown together, Trajan beats this one hands down. We'll keep our copy for now, but maybe not forever. On the ducal scale, I give it a 3. And yeah, I think those thoughts pretty well echo mine. I don't actually own any Felds, Sean. I know that surprises you.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
You should own Castles of Burgundy.
When the new edition of Castles of Burgundy comes out, which I think is later this year,
yeah,
I will get that probably, because right now so at some point I will get Abby's game tastes heavy enough where she'll enjoy this game at some point.
Okay.
And when she does, it needs to look good, because the look of a game has a decent sized impact on her willingness to play or enjoy.
Sure.
Her tolerance for ugly games is pretty low. So, yeah, I would scoop up the more nice looking version. Also because I like the more nice looking version. Probably. I haven't played it yet, but I'd have to imagine it can't be worse, right? It can't be worse than the original.
I would hope not.
Yeah. So, Sean, this is an interesting one at the end here, because you have to give the game itself a score, but also because you've played and owned so many Felds, where does it rank in the overall Feld power ranking for you?
So overall, I would probably put it as a mid Feld. So I think I've played like 15 or 16 Felds, and I would say it's probably in the lower half of the middle band. So like 10, 11 out of 15, 16, however many Felds I've played.
Okay.
Not low. So, we played a couple Wednesdays ago, we played Strasbourg again, which I hadn't played in like 4 or 5 years. And it's a fantastic Feld auction game. Just fantastic. It is super good. Feels super cutthroat. And I was just like, man, I love Strasbourg. I love some of these older Felds. So, I mean, I would say, my top Felds would be, obviously I mentioned Castles, Bora Bora, Trajan, Strasbourg is up there, Macau is up there, Bruges is up there, Notre Dame. I would be hard-pressed to say, let's pull this out over any of those 7 games I just mentioned.
Okay. Yeah. That's not a great sign for it. Does it do enough to stay in your collection? For any other reason other than it's a Feld game?
With that, probably not. It's probably going to stay because it's a Feld game, and Raquel likes her Feld games, and there's a bit of a collector aspect to it that, we're not going to get rid of Feld games. But if I'm going to rate this on our 6-point scale, which is what we do, by the way, a 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. If you'll recall, I mentioned that if we had given this a score several months ago, I probably would have given it a high 4. Also remember that I tend to grade Felds a little bit harsher than on average, I would say. So because, Alex, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So this is going to wind up a 3. Game is okay, not exciting, will play in the right situation. And I think that describes it. And for comparison, a 4 is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the duchy.
Interesting. Not surprising. I'm right about where you are too. And what's tricky for me is if I'm thinking of how I would describe the game, I think good rather than okay. But if I think, do I care enough to have it, access to it, or have it in the collection? The answer is no. So I think the second one kind of overrides the first one a little bit for me in this situation. And ultimately, I'm going to give it a high 3.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with that. It is a good game, but I think I had kind of the same analysis that you had, but I'm not super excited to have it or have access to it. But it is a good game, and I do think it's worth checking out and giving it a shot before you decide where you feel about it.
Yeah, I just don't know if this one's going to light folks on fire. And honestly, there are better Felds out there. There are better Felds to recommend.
At least 7.
Yeah. Well, per you, yeah, at least 7, which you listed. I don't know if I could name 7 that I like better than this, but I could name enough. So, yeah, there you go. That's Forum Trajanum. Gets a 3 from Sean and a high 3 from me.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, finally, before we wrap things up, the Dukes Double Take, an episode that I did not participate in because this was the SeanCon episode 180, Achilles' Heel and Sean's Wheel, where y'all reviewed Lords of Hellas, which is a game that, no appeal for me. I haven't played it. Haven't played it since you did the review. Before the review, may never play it.
No, don't play it. You would not like it at all.
Excellent. But you guys liked it. Your crew liked it a good amount. In fact, fives all around.
Yeah, so this was Ellie, Andy, and myself reviewing this for the last SeanCon. If I had thought about it, we probably should have just done the double take during the recording and had us all there. Yeah, so I would venture to say for Andy and Ellie that it's probably remained a 5. It has certainly remained a high 5 for me. And by the way, a 5 is a great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it. I did play it one time since the review, early on after the review, but it's come up quite a bit. I mean, it's something that Rory and I have said we need to get Lords of Hellas back to the table. It was a strong contender to get back to the table for SeanCon, but there's just so much time. This is a fantastic Greek fused with not steampunk, but almost like Warhammer-ish sensibilities. It's a dudes on the map game. There's different ways to win. So there's kind of knocking down the leader. There's special abilities that you can get. So it kind of has that Kemet feel. Not as good as Kemet, like was BJ was saying, he's looking for something to replace Castles of Burgundy. I'm looking for something that's better than Kemet. And this was not it, but it's still quite good. I really do enjoy this game, and we'll probably make an effort to get it out sooner rather than later again.
Where does it stay? Does it stay right there at the same?
Yeah, I think I said, it's staying as a 5. Great game. We'll rarely turn down a play of it.
Would you say it's a high 5 still?
Yeah, I'd call it a high 5.
You know who else gives out great high 5s? The friendly staff at Trader Joe's.
So Sylvain Lacroix over in the guild said, first of all, I must admit that I was skeptical about Lords of Hellas when I first heard about the game. The general concept has been seen a few times already, and with games that are excellent. Chaos in the Old World, Kemet, Blood Rage, etc. Dudes on the map all look the same after all, but the game shines and has the merit of being a little different. Card-driven combat, interesting mechanisms, and well-designed. Hellas has been well received at my table. The problem is that with many games available, I'm not sure this one will be played often. I'll still keep my copy, but it might be on the to-trade list eventually. I would give it a low 4, and a low 4 is a good game worth playing just all the time. Belongs in the duchy. But yeah, this is definitely a game that's quite in my wheelhouse. I love these dudes on a map game, and this does a really good job of capturing that.
Well, I'm glad you like it, and I'm glad you have people to play it with, because it won't be me.
Nope.
Well, that's our Duke's double take of Lords of Hellas. Basically stays at a high 5 for Sean. Finally, let's look at the rest of the episode names, the titles that we liked but didn't pick. Starting off with Blaine Miley with Monumental Success.
Yeah, referencing the fact that that this Feld-mas in July is a monumental success.
Is it?
You build. That's what he said. You build monuments in Forum Trajanum, and also the success of the Spiel winners. So yeah, that's pretty solid. Baker Mitchell suggested throw llama from the train, which has the least to do with what we're talking about other than the reference to Llama the game, which was one of the Spiel nominees, but also kind of an inside reference because I mentioned the movie last episode or 2 episodes ago, Throw Mama from the Train, about the crisscross because we were doing Alex games for Sean and Sean games for Alex. So I like that one.
All right. Tim Tix suggested Feld of Mars. I don't understand this one, Sean.
Well, because there's the Field of Mars, and Mars is a Roman god, and we're talking about Feld games, and so the Field of Mars ties into Lords of Hellas as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's solid.
Now I
It's
said
solid.
Feld of Mars. Is it actually Field of Mars?
No, it's Feld of Mars.
Okay, got it.
But
all right.
It's referring to the Field of
Okay.
Mars.
Now, yep, I'm on board now. Okay. Anyway,
Okay.
nice job, Tim.
All right, and then BJ suggested Roman Holiday, which is a classic movie, as well as it's referencing the Roman aspect of Forum Trajanum, as well as the Holiday of Feld-mas, which was, I think, a strong runner-up.
I feel like this name was either in the top 6 before or was an episode title before. It just seems so familiar. I don't know.
Definitely could be.
Anyway. And finally, Severin Hellberg, I hope I did not pronounce that too badly, came with Feldernalia, referencing Bacchanalia and Feld, I think?
Yeah, or I think more Saturnalia.
Oh, okay.
So different, various Roman festivals that celebrated different Roman deities. So this is the celebration of Feld. So Alex, I don't know if you know this, but originally Feld-mas was Feldernalia, and then the Feldians co-opted pagan practices.
It got commercial again. It got commercial.
Well, no, not commercial. It was just co-opted. Pagan practices were co-opted by the Feldians.
Interesting. All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 205. Thanks again to the name father, Steve O'Rourke, for I'll Be Rome for Feld-mas, our episode title. Let's wrap it up, Sean.
Yeah, well, that's what I would have said.
I know, but I beat you to it.
So,
oh, well, Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention, but also last part of the episode.
Dang it, I thought you were going to, I was thinking, is he going to mention that? Anyway, that's going to do it. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Feld you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on July 28th, 2019. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers, LLC. You can find out more about Arcane Wonders' fine games at ArcaneWonders.com and learn more about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!